So for those that you don't know me, I'm Pedro Juan Hernández. I'm the senior archivist here at Centro, and I'm the curator of this exhibit, Cruising the Atlantic, the journey of steamships from Puerto Rico to New York, 1900 to 1948. And I just want to welcome you aboard the SS Central Library. So it's a pleasure to have you here sharing this moment with us. And I wanted to, first of all, to dedicate this exhibit to all those Puerto Rican pioneers that came in at the beginning of the 20th century and through 1940s, and the steamship, they lasted a little bit longer, but that was the time period that Puerto Ricans really travel and use the steamship. As you see, the story of the steamships is a more complex story, and but for us, the Puerto Ricans, and for Ralph, who's José Rafael Méndez Jr., who's the collector who has allowed us to duplicate many of these art documents and materials, artifacts that he's been collecting for many years. I will let him talk a little bit about himself later, but what I want to say is this exhibition is possible because we also have been fortunate to get in donation the papers of many Puerto Ricans that has came to the U.S. and had made history here, and the stories are in this story. What so that's the way it goes. The idea of the exhibit is to combine the resources that we have, but obviously Ralph is passionate about the steamships, and you can see the amazing things he's been collecting all this year. And we pull out the stories of Jesus Colón, Gilberto Concepción de Gracia, Apura Belpré, Antonia Pantoja, all those people who came, the famous Puerto Rican pioneers. And we believe that story is still pertinent. It's very important for Puerto Ricans to know about that history of those Puerto Ricans that came by steamships. And also, it's important because the Puerto Ricans' migration to the stateside continues. As we know, right now there are many Puerto Ricans living in Puerto Rico right now. So we also want to dedicate this exhibit. I think that history is important because it allows us to learn a lot of things about from the past. And the steamship definitely can speak volumes about the Puerto Rican experience. And with that, I want to say how we met Don José Rafael Méndez Jr. So it was in 2002 we met him, and he was we were presenting the book of Pioneros that our former director, Félix Matos Rodriguez, and we did, and in the corner was José Rafael Méndez, and he was very kind. He greeted us, and then he said, by the way, I collect some things on steamships, and maybe if you want. Then always people call me to come into the place, and Mario Cesar and many other people knows here, just right away say, yes, of course I want to see what you have. And together with my former director of the library, Carmelina Perez, we went there to see the wonderful collection. And we were amazed by the things that he has, and you can see some of them. He collects not only about steamship, he collects about many other things. But the passion that he has been collecting is commendable, and he has many interests in terms of the Puerto Rican history, and so that was a fantastic experience. And then if you add to that one the person who greets you with coffee and a little sandwich and tea, and has a big smile, him and his wife, Carmen Serrano, they preach you. And before we used to have Don Jejo, who was the Lord. And we really were like, God, we can be here like doing inventory and working at this. So Ralph allowed us to microfilm some of his collection that we have it here, microfilm, some of the things that you see here. And he also he donated a diagram that we have on Coamo a long time ago. And Ralph also, he collects almost everything. And he's been generous. He's a generous person, and he knows history of the Puerto Ricans, about music, and you name it. So with that, I want to introduce our captain on this voyage, José Rafael Méndez Jr. Please come on.
Thank Pedro and Juan.
Carlos Blanco, yeah.
I just collect. Okay, my wife puts up with me. I have storage that she said, if you're going to do this, I just don't want to see it. So it goes up stuff. You should see the house. I live in a typical New York City apartment, so it's small. But I try to put everything together. My problem is that when you come over my house, I take everything out. But then I got to put it back. Okay? So my stuff's to look at. My stuff is great, it's important to me, but it's really for everyone to look at because it's your story too. And I love the way that Pedro and Carlos have put together the story. Again, I just collect. I don't have the artistic vision to put this. When I dress either dark or white. My wife does the dressing for me, so I don't have an artistic bone in my body. I just collect. But I love the way that they presented it. They put a story together behind it, because this is what it is, a story about us. This is important because our parents, our great-grandparents came here. Before the big migration in the 50s, how did the Puerto Ricans come here? They didn't swim, so they came by boat. And a lot of what I found interesting was going through the pamphlets of the ship's registry, and you see all these famous names that came back and traveled. And for me, history is a live thing. It's not just something in a book. For me, history, I love to go into an antique show or an ephemera show, go to a basement and smell the history. I get sick. I got asthma, I get the dust, but that's history. I love to taste it. I have a tactile relationship with history. It's not just intellectual. It's not just from the book. It's touching it. And I like to think that the spirits of people that, like Rafael Hernández, Osito Escobar, and all our other great figures in our history have perhaps touched or drank from one of those cups, or buttered their toast. So one of the things I gave at a speech was organized by Mario a few years ago. There was a bunch of artists and artist appraisers, and they were talking about our art. And I sort of got a little angry because it was like, well, this market and that market, we're not of this market. And finally, when it came up my turn to speak, I said a few things I don't think was so bad, but it was like, hey, what value you put it? I collect for the most important reason, most selfish reason. It's my story. You can't relate to it. It means nothing to you, but it means everything to me. Being born, I wasn't born in New York City. I was born in Westchester County, in a little town called Tarrytown, factory town. Okay, my mother met there. I went to school there. I was educated there. When it came to Puerto Rican history, or anybody, people's history of color, never discussed it. But for Puerto Rican history, it was always what I called negative numbers. Crime rates, poverty rates, infant mortality, pregnancy, all those negative numbers. And you walk away not feeling too good. I loved history, but it was like there's no history about us. And this journey, and the reason I'm talking about this, because when I went into the service, my eyes were open. When I go overseas, and I see that, I see the ships manifest, and I see all these Spanish names, I'm like, wow, man, a lot of Puerto Ricans in here. I go in and I meet these guys, and they're Oriental looking. And I'm like, whoa, what's happening here? I know about Mexicans, I know about Dominicans, I know about, what I know, but who are these guys that look Oriental? Well, they were Filipinos. They were Guamanians. I'm like, you got Spanish in you? So that got me going. I'm like, wow. While there, I feel like I'm being swallowed up because I'm in the belly of the beast in my identity. They only go by your last name. And I'm like, wow, besides feeling homesick, I'm like, wow, I'm beginning to lose myself. And there was a book on the anthology of Puerto Rican literature. A little brown book that they had it in the ship's library. That book was like my savior, so I started reading that book. And as a kid, I remember reading Down These Mean Streets. So I remember the Marine Tiger, with his girlfriend with him. So all these things started coming together. And I get out of the service, and I go to school, I got my GI Bill, I go to college, I graduate, and I do what I do now, and I'm beginning to collect things. And then I met a gentleman by the name of Henry Medina, who has the same disease that I have, which is collecting. And Henry's he's a friend, and not only is a friend, he's a mentor. And Henry's a well-known collector, music historian, film. Henry's a guy on Latin music. And Henry and I would go on weekends. We would go all over, up and down the East Coast, going to shows, paper shows, antique shows, stamp shows, postcard shows, the New York, the postcard show downtown, all those shows. And we'd be looking for stuff for us, about us. And we would find stuff. We would go, when we went to Virginia, I think on the way down, we were driving down to Virginia, Chincoteague. A trip that usually takes me 5 hours ended up taking 8 hours. Why? Because every antique shop, we stopped. Whoa, got anything on Puerto Rico? No, Puerto Rico. I want to look anyway. And that's us. What I want to leave you is that our history is in the hands of everybody else but ours. And what's interesting, this Puerto Rico line, everyone thinks that ground zero was New York. No, it was, but our people immigrated to Baltimore. The ships went to Baltimore. The ships went to New Orleans. The ships went to Texas. So you go to Texas, go to the antique shows, you might find something about us there. I guarantee it, okay? And it's stuff that's old. You just got to find it and a little luck. But our stuff is all over the place. And my thing and Henry's thing is that we don't like to consider ourselves as collectors. We like to consider ourselves more as protectors, because that's our story. And it may not be important to a lot of other people, but for me and my community, that's important. And it makes us feel good. And I think it's something that I want the kids to know about this. So when they're sitting in social studies class or history class, and they're learning about everybody else's history, they can say, well, you know what? I got a history too. So places like the Schomburg and this place here are very important for our kids, and we need to bring them here so that they can understand that when you go to history class, ask them about, oh, do you know about Fulano de Tal? So that they can feel part of history, that we make history too, that we got Puerto Rican astronauts, that NASA is full of Puerto Rican engineers, things like that. Our kids need to know that. And that's why I collect, and I just hope that some of the enthusiasm I got, Henry has, Mario has, and all the other collectors out there, we're a strange bunch, I tell you. Some of us are very, very protective, very jealous, I try not to be, I try to share, because I know I didn't have it. And I just hope that, with a little more funding, we can get more funding, more stuff to do for this place, because this place is important. And Pedro, I've done research in here one day. I was looking on something, it took me like months. I must have went through every newspaper from a diario for about 10 years, looking for some particular stuff. This place is important. And what Pedro does and Centro does is very important. And I'm glad, I'm happy to have been associated with this here. And I hope we can do other stuff in the future. And I want to thank you for coming. And if there's anything I can answer, I'm here. If you want to call me about something, I'm readily available. Pedro knows I'm Puerto Rican. Casa tu casa.
I have one question. My understanding from an aunt whom I interviewed, she told me they came into Brooklyn.
Yes, they came. The first ships came through Brooklyn, Columbia Street, all that
That's what I
gentrified
wanna
area.
know.
Yeah,
There's
they
no
came.
museum
Pier
or
25. No, it's all gentrified now.
Pier 25?
Pier 25 is in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn. That was where the ships first came. Actually, they came a little. That was the majority of the ships came from there.
Okay.
The diaspora actually started in Brooklyn. It wasn't in a barrio.
Yeah, no.
It came through Brooklyn,
Yeah.
and then it spread out. And then it spread out. But Brooklyn was Pier 35, I believe that was the number. And then they moved over to where the South Street Seaport is. Pier 14 and Pier 15, that's by Wall Street.
Manhattan.
And up what was known before just south of the South Street Seaport.
Yeah.
And by Wall Street. That area there was all the Puerto Rico line. Some of the people used to, when it was full there, they used to discharge them out in the Hudson River by Canal Street. They had piers out there. And that's where most of our people. I always like to fond the saying, when I went down, I had an issue with the South Street Seaport, is that they had everybody's migration but ours. Right. You know, and I walk the streets down there, and I walk with a cobblestone. Again, I'm a tactile person. I got feel. I'm like, you know what? My people walk these streets too, just like the Europeans. None against Europeans. I'm saying, but where's our story? Our story. We should have an exhibition here on our migration. So those are things we got to work on in the future.